beautiful California coast. Classic 62 Ferrari. Monterey Car Show? Perhaps the Concours d'Elegance? No. This is the House of Muscle.
So you guys might be asking yourself, Mike, why do you have a Ferrari on the House of Muscle? I mean, it's not generally what you guys feature. Well, it's not general. We never feature stuff like this on the House of Muscle. However, if I kind of do this, drop a gear, well, for some reason, that doesn't sound like a V12 now, does it? Nope. All right, so let's talk about what's in this car right now. This is the cool part. So, long gone, and I mean long gone, is the original Colombo V12 that came in this thing. And in its place, is you ready? Wait for it. A 383 Chevy.
Never mind what the valve covers say. This engine, it's all bow tie small block.
Mechanically, what are we looking at? We're looking at a 1962 Ferrari GTE with a 383 Chevy, a Tremec 5-speed, okay, and believe it or not, an 8 3/4 rear out of an old Chrysler with the flanges milled so that they will accept the knockoff real Ferrari wire wheels. That's pretty cool. The beauty of an old car is that every old car has a history. Every old car has a story. Every owner has a story about the old car that they own. This one is very, very interesting because it has somewhat of a sordid past. Where in 1960, the 250 GTE was released by Ferrari. This car was Ferrari's first four-seater. That was huge because all of a sudden now, as opposed to just bringing your mistress on a date, you could bring your wife and your two kids and you could leave your mistress or your girlfriend at home. So, like, wives were a big fan of this car.
In fact, it was a wife and not a mistress who actually should be credited for finding this car. And if you'll let me go in reverse for a second, its owner Gary found this particular Ferrari the same way I used to find my muscle cars.
There was, in fact, a time where the internet did not exist, and that to find out the history of a vehicle, you actually had to do some research. That meant going to the library. That meant looking at periodicals, trying to find old magazine ads. That meant actually doing your homework as opposed to just clicking on your keyboard.
My wife and I had a habit of going out to breakfast early on Sunday mornings. Back in the time when you looked for old cars in the Sunday classifieds or community newspapers, sometimes we'd play a little game and she'd grab the classifieds before I could get them. And she'd start reading off ads and ask me questions about them. And she said, oh, here's a 62 Ferrari. You know, what do you think? She told me the price and I said, oh, it's a kit.
Gary couldn't believe it. He thought it was a kit car because, well, the price was really, really low. But then I kept nagging at him and nagging at him and nagging at him. And like any good car guy, he said, you know what? Let me call this number and let me go take a little ride down to San Jose and see what this thing is about.
It was about 6:30 in the morning by the time we'd finished breakfast and I called the guy. And he said, no, it's a real car. It's had an engine transplant and it's a part, but you know, everything's there. Got there as quickly as we could, pulled up. I saw it rolled out. The doors were off, the hood was up, trunk was up. I could immediately see parts of the tube frame and knew it was a real car. Turned to my wife and said, oh, it's real. I went back out to the car to tell Patty we bought it, and there were cars lining up at the curb wanting to see it, so I think it was a good decision.
And that was it. He owned this car. The other thing, when this car was new, it came with a Colombo V12 that made about 240 horsepower. That engine propelled the car to 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds or so. That car also made the top speed around 140 miles an hour, which was not bad for the day. In fact, it was damn good. The suspension was a double wishbone setup up front with a 4-speed manual and electronic overdrive. Out back, it was a solid live axle.
They built about 950 of them. It was intended to propel Ferrari from a specialty boutique manufacturer of low production cars to a mass market manufacturer. Today, 950 cars in a year sounds a little silly, but that was a big, big jump for Ferrari.
But what's crazy is that This used to be a Ferrari parts car. This is what the Ferrariisti would use as a donor car. They would take the motor, they would take the Colombo V12, they would take the transmission out, and they would do transplants into like a 250 GT California or a 250 GTO. So many of these cars were basically just stripped for parts.
I never really actually considered putting a Ferrari engine back in this car. The original matching numbers engine, whereabouts was unknown when I got the car. I had chased some leads down early on in my ownership and all ran into dead ends. And, you know, potentially if I'd found the numbers matching drivetrain, I might have considered that. But the car had already been modified to some degree because the V8 had already been installed. My dad picked up the project, took it on wholesale to really finish the car and make it an operating, driving car.
It's when you start it up and the ear will tell you that, okay, well, something else is going on. You know, when you jump on it and you hear that burble, it doesn't sound like a Ferrari. It sounds like a hot rod. It sounds like a muscle car, but a little different in that respect, because believe it or not, about half the exhaust is still the original Ferrari exhaust. So you're talking maybe like a 1 7/8 inch pipe as opposed to like a 2.5 inch that would be on a normal kind of 383. Oh, but the thing's got grunt. Got a lot of grunt. When Gary got the car, he said, okay, he goes, well, you know what? We can have a little fun with this thing and we can do it right. And we can do it in such a way where people look at the car and respect it. And it's going to tell somewhat of the story of Gary's family.
So I originally bought the car as a retirement project for myself. I literally bought it, put it in the garage, threw a cover over it, rented a storage place, which just ended up filled floor to ceiling with parts and boxes and everything that went with it. Dad had always been into airplanes, cars, trucks, whatever, and he called me, said, what would you think if you wanted to bring the car up and I could spend a little time on it this winter? The stage was sort of set.
We know this story has a very happy ending because, well, I'm driving it. But Gary's pursuit of his version of a muscle car doesn't finish with this one piece of Italian perfection. He's a car guy. And what does every car guy need? Well, that's easy. Something big enough to collect and carry his cars. So let me introduce you to the Super Hauler.
Super Hauler was born from our desire to have a personal transporter, to move our own cars around, to go pick up cars at other places in the country, and have it be a vintage-looking vehicle, and at the same time, usable, comfortable for long-distance travel, because that's what we had in mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Super Hauler. The 1971 American LaFrance fire truck that was built by Ben McCloy of Jack Dick Customs in Martinez, California. Now, this isn't your normal everyday car hauler. This is a 100% custom rig that was built because, well, Gary really didn't know what he wanted as far as a custom toy hauler was, and Ben, well, he just knew how to build one.
We had talked quite a few times about what kind of car would make a good car hauler. We came to the conclusion of a fire truck being the best chassis, weight, capability, and engine.
When Gary showed up to Ben's store, he said a couple of things. One of which, the hauler needed to be comfortable. 2, it needed to have things like air conditioning and a stereo. 3, it needed to be something that the world had never seen before and something that was going to make people just stop and look at it.
We came back with that thing and really started looking at what it was going to take to tear it apart and make something different out of it. It was overwhelming, to say the least.
It's just cool. It's so neat that they just thought outside the box, like way outside the box, and created a rig that just nails it on all points, man.
So we had this pencil drawing, and this is what we're going to make the car. Unfortunately, it was a pencil drawing and an artist's conception, and making some of the features that were on that drawing come to life got difficult at times. And the only time Gary and I ever disagreed was right here. I made this the first time and it was a little too steep. And then I made it and it was a little too round. And we probably redid this one arch 4 times before it was perfect for what he saw in the drawing and what he fell in love with.
Yeah.
Which we just kept doing it until it was right.
There were going to be a lot of challenges, but he's famous for saying it's just a car, we'll figure it out. And he did.
So powering this behemoth is an 8V71T Detroit diesel. It makes 385 horsepower and over 1,100 pound-feet of torque. Now, is it fast? Well, if I nail it, well, no, the answer is no, it's totally not fast. This doesn't have to be fast. You see, you can get on the interstate with this thing and you cruise it at a solid 65, 70 miles an hour if you'd like. And the way that Ben and Gary set this thing up, it's actually very comfortable to drive. So inside, what am I looking at? Well, it's a beautiful custom interior. That interior includes seats out of a 1973 BMW 3.0 CS. It incorporates a beautiful suede headliner with push-on lights. Now you even have cup holders. I mean, it has every amenity you can want. I've never driven something like this before, but I know that I want one.
While the super hauler is super cool, ultimately it's not why I brought you here. This is. Gary's pursuit of perfection was never intended to sit in a museum or a showroom, because Gary's a car guy, and if you haven't figured it out by now, car guys drive.
To go find a derelict car that's one that you've always admired and bring it back to life and then enjoy it is just a lot of fun. I've had cars that were so picture perfect that you're afraid to drive them because you come in for a drive, you feel like you have to wipe down the underside, and you know, life's just too short for that. The driving is the most fun to me.
When he couldn't find a part, he made it. When it was cold in the shed behind his home in Idaho, he added more wood to the stove. And when a language barrier presented itself, he simply referenced the old Italian dictionary he kept by his side. That was Gary's father, the man who helped bring the old Ferrari back to life.
It's just amazing. I mean, he was 80 years old when he took it on. 2 years later, we were driving it down the road. We hit a long straight stretch of deserted road and so planted the throttle. I don't know how fast we were going. There was a grin from ear to ear, like a little kid. He just loved it.
So, will he ever sell this car? No, this car is never going anywhere. This car is going to be about lineage.
My goal is that it stays in the family literally forever. And one of my sons has said he will take on the responsibility to be the steward of the car for the rest of his life. And so I'll transfer it to him. He will maintain it, insure it, protect it, and preserve it for the next generation. And his job then is to identify someone a couple of generations out that'll take on the same obligation and preserve it. So my hope is that a future descendant will be enjoying this car 100, 150, 200 years from now.
So here's the thing about both of Gary's creations. On the one hand, you have the super hauler, this gigantic seafoam green car hauler. Because let's face it, it is a beautiful piece. And then you have this wonderful, beautiful Ferrari. Some people will say, well, is it all Ferrari? And my answer to that is, well, yeah. Is the engine American? Yeah, sure it is. But here's the thing. If I go in and I need a heart transplant, does that mean that I'm not Mike anymore? Does that mean that that new heart doesn't give me life anymore? The answer to that is no. What Gary did with this is he gave it life again. It's not languishing in a barn, it's not languishing in a garage. It's here, at the beach. It's 60-something degree weather. So here's the deal. Is there anything wrong with this car? Not a damn thing.
So just a reminder that episodes of The House of Muscle go live on MotorTrendOnDemand.com about a month before they go live on YouTube. So head on over there and check them out.
This is Ford's big old full-size for 1960. The 1960 Ford Galaxy Starliner. Love this thing.
new episode of the House of Muscle premieres exclusively on MotorTrend On Demand. So sign up for a free 30-day trial and watch the latest episode now.